the enemies of them and just, really work on like flanking maneuvers and stuff. And just, I don't know what this is. What is this? I don't know. Hello, welcome back to another campaign diary. I am Fen the GM, and we are continuing from the last episode where we had the party stuck in Grieger's Grotto. This time, Hungry Squid was joining the party, so we grew in ranks. As a refresher, we have Bromdeer, the dwarven fighter, played by my brother Cal. We have Grispy, the gnome rogue, played by my other brother Clicks. We have the paladin, Gupid Belnar, played by Brav. And now we have the old man, who is a wizard, played by Hungry Squid. Right as we began, we picked it up right where they left off, exactly where they left the players, and we just kind of had Hungry Squid's character be the person who was spying on the party. We had throughout the session last time, they were making a couple of perception checks and they never made them. In my head, I was thinking that it was going to be the goblins who were kind of keeping an eye on the people who were in the caves that only they tended to venture into. But this was actually a really good opportunity to bring Squid into the party, so we ran with it. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of what actually happened, a couple of just comments on the videos themselves. Background changed. Obviously, I'm using a green screen. So we're going to be changing that a couple times. Just if you like something, let me know. I'm just going to be switching it up, seeing what sticks. I'm changing up the lighting too, so if you see some shadows, that's why I like to talk with my hands, so occasionally it's probably going to mess with this new light. I'm not used to that. I've upgraded my lighting for the first time in 5 years? Yeah. So with that housekeeping out of the way, back to the story. Squid didn't have a name for his character. He was thinking originally that he was going to be this amnesiac old man, and talking it out with him, he kind of ventured away from that, and he ended up going into the path of an evil wizard bent on revenge. And I like the idea of anyone who's using arcane energy, arcane wizardry, to have this weakness to knowledge of their enemies. So I have this rule where if a player or a person, if any person, NPC, player, character, whatever they are, if they have a name and they use arcane power, anyone who knows their true name, the name they were born with, given to them, the name that they identify as theirs. The rules are vague on it, but if somebody knows that name, they have power over you. In game mechanics, it means they have advantage to hit on you. There's saves, anything you're saving against from them, you're going to have disadvantage on. Just any way that they can get just that little tiny bit of edge up. If they know your name, they have it. So Squid doesn't trust any of the players, particularly Brav. So he messaged me what the character's name is, and he just kind of said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Yeah, my name." And he looked on the map, and the map had a cavern labeled as Empty Caverns. And so he said, "My name is Empty Caverns." And so now we all refer to him as EC. To me, that's a very fitting Squid character name. To some people, it might seem like, oh, that's so silly. Why would the character... It worked for me. I enjoy it. And I think the other players got a laugh out of it too. I kind of have this vision of Empty Caverns becoming this like high-level wizard with, power crackling at his fingertips, and just his wizard name being like EC, like having it spelled out in some like exotic fashion. That's just headcanon though for me, so who knows if that's actually going to happen. So in the last session, if you forgot, we had Bromdeer spent almost all of his time mining. He found some miner's picks, and by gods, he was going to use them. This session was no different. He had found, or the group had found, a long abandoned dwarven mining camp. They had found the dead dwarves, they found the ghost of their leader, and their leader had said, "You get back to work." And so Bromdeer, being the good dwarf he was, said, "This is how we escape, lads." And spoiler alert, It is not how they escaped. They got really close to this session. They didn't quite make it out. We played for a really long time. Last time we played for about 4 hours. In this session, it was almost 6. In the module we were using, or that I was running the campaign based off of, there is this tunnel. It's called an escape tunnel, but it's like supposed to be a ridiculously long distance underground, and it's going to take like hundreds of man hours to get through. And I did some, I don't think it actually says how far it is, but I knew Cal would want to know, because Bromdeer wants to dig. He's a dwarf. That's what they do. And I think I worked it out too. If it was just him working, it would take like 25 days nonstop. I think like 600 feet is what I said, and it was like a foot an hour. I don't even remember, but it was a really long time. And every hour that somebody digs, there is a table that you roll on, and there's a pretty fair, it's about a 50% chance nothing happens. And then the rest of it is split between mostly poison gas escaping and a small chance of a flammable gas escaping. They were all really, really caught on the flammable part, although it never actually happened. Bromdeer got poisoned like 3 times, I think, and just was like, I'm fine, I got this. I'm a hardy dwarf with maximum HP, because I don't remember. So he's a level 3 at the end of this campaign. Or at the end of this session, he got to level 3. He rolled, he has a D10, I think, for his hit die, and he rolled a 10. And I think when he leveled up to 2, he did the exact same thing. And he's got a Constitution modifier of +4. So he has a lot of HP at this point for level 3. Even at level 2, which is where he was at when he was mining, he still had a lot of HP. And he has resistance to poison, so he was just kind of taking it. Mining away, taking the hits. Cupid offered to heal him, and he was just like, nah, it's fine. I'll just rest it off eventually, no big deal. And I feel like he probably could have too. Like, barring something catastrophic happening, I'm pretty sure he'd, like, all other things being equal, if we had just sat for mining sessions instead of D&D sessions, pretty sure he could have made it. I guess that's the difference between a dwarven hero of the Forge-worn clan and some dwarven miners. Eventually, the guards call for 4 combatants from the human faction because there's 4 players, so I figured, hey, that's perfect. They can all go for combat, get some XP, level up. But Cal was like, you know what? No, I got this. It'll be fine. And it turned out he was really thinking that the combat was going to go on for like a really long amount of time. And he thought he could really get some mining done. And oh boy, it did not last long, and he really should have been there. So I had Malphasek go with them, and they were facing the hobgoblins. And since they only met the hobgoblin leader, and they hadn't met the other 2 leaders, I figured, let's put them into combat and see what happens. And boy, did they not disappoint. I also introduced Godric Grieger, who was the son of Gladwin Grieger, the head of this grotto, the leader of this family who runs this place. And Godric is this wizard type, this kind of frustrated wizard who just feels like if only he had a shot, if only he had a teacher, man, he might do good. A little sadistic side to him, self-absorbed, that kind of thing. But I didn't really get a chance to go into that too much. Really tried to introduce that aspect of like, I just want to see blood. But once the players were turning the tide, they brought Feston Elfcleaver, the leader of the hobgoblins, down to unconsciousness, and it was Grispy's turn. He did the attack. He was ready to go. He had just swung once. He was going to swing again, and I had Godric say, hold, to introduce this mechanic of, like, not everything has to be about death. I mean, they don't want you to kill everybody, after all. So Godric says, hold! Stay your blade, let's see what the crowd says. He didn't say that much, but he said hold. He said stop. He was gonna say more, but I said, what do you do? And Click says, fuck it, I kill him. And so he kills the only named NPC of another group that they have met. And in so doing, are disobeying the words of one of the Griegers, which is not good, and they are about to find out. A couple turns go by. I say, Brav, what are you doing? And I hear, I'm muted. I was muted this whole time. I was trying to stop the madness. There was nothing to be done. It was already the moment had passed, and we said it. Oh, the moment. I say we. I'll take ownership of this. I said nope. Well, the moment has passed. We were too deep. The moment it was quick. You didn't even realize what was happening. If you had have known, you would have spoken out. You would have maybe reached out. You would have taken some kind of heroic action. But you were too caught up. The battle was too fierce, and you were focused on other things. And Brav he wasn't happy. I don't think he got it. He moved on. He went with it, but he kept saying, "If only I hadn't have been muted." And as he's doing this, Cal is from Peanut Gallery over here is going, "You fools!" He might have said some stronger words. You somethings. Oof. And he's gonna be, and he told them that you had better have an explanation ready for Bromdeer. So at this point, they're kind of figuring out who their characters are. At least Clicks, Cal, and Brav are. Squid is still pretty new to this. He's kind of jumped right into this. He's had a little role play between the other characters, and this is kind of his first encounter of like, what am I actually doing? And he made a decision there, but the other characters are really kind of coalescing, crystallizing into their roles, into their alignments, into who they are, and what is too far for them, I think. Crispy has really fallen into the whole chaotic, neutral, I do whatever the heck I want. And as much as Brav is a paladin, I feel like he embraces that chaotic side. So I feel like maybe he's a little more like true chaotic, if that's not a thing, but I feel like that's where it is. More of a true neutral, or a chaotic neutral, in the sense of like, I want to do good, but like sometimes maybe you don't have to. Not to change his alignment on him, but that's kind of where I see this paladin. And I think it works, and I think we can work with it. And especially if he's doing the whole like, I want to do good. Like, I think if the character is thinking, I want to do good, and then just like fall short and fall short and fall short, that's okay. And I think, depending on how we play the doctrine of his god, Bahamut, in this setting, that's going to be fine. I don't see any problem with that. But anyway, getting back to what Squid's doing is one of his first few actions. The guards start to swarm in. They're trying to kill the hobgoblins, so the hobgoblins can't go back and say, "Hey, that dude killed Feston when Feston was down," and the guys were like, "Hey, stop, maybe he lives." So the guards come in. Empty Caverns is holding back by the door to the guard room, to the preparation room, I should say, and he's been casting spells, doing stuff, doing wizardy things, and the guards come in and they like swarm him, and he's like, "Hey, I got a spell for this." He casts Thunderous Wave, I think it's called. Maybe I got the exact name wrong, but he casts the spell, and every single one of them saved. Every single one. Nothing happened. He just cast the spell, boom, and nothing. So the guards attack him. I think what did they do? They beat him down pretty good. They Cupid gave up. Melfisat Malphasette gave up immediately. She was like, I didn't do anything. Sorry, like, nope, wasn't me. You can't, nope, I don't know these guys. Crispy eventually laid his weapons down once the guards started to come out, and they took him back into the preparation room. They ferried the remaining. One hobgoblin remained, and I think he only had like 1 HP left. So they were real close to eliminating the witnesses there. But they didn't quite make it, and they got taken back. Crispy, who was otherwise fine, just got like, in a cinematic moment, just the snot kicked out of him. So I basically just said, they take you back, they surround you, and they just like kick you like, in a movie scene where the hero is just down and out. They just like kick him in the ribs in a dark alley. It's that kind of scene, and he's unconscious. Empty Caverns is unconscious, and they just kind of rough up the other two, just like push him against the wall, just like, nope, you stay there. You are guilty by association. And then they get taken back to the caverns, dumped off, and that was that encounter. So the other two are resting. They've been healed a little bit. Zante's come over, and she's kind of cast Cure Wounds on each of them. She ends up using all of her charges of that, so she's got nothing left. Cupid decides, I need to go find Bromdeer and tell him what's happened. Now, Cupid has an intelligence that's very low. I think it's 6, maybe 9. It's low. It's not great. And he decides, yep, I gotta go find him and tell him exactly what happened. And I think he's still feeling guilty as a player of like, I really should have stopped him. I can't believe I was muted. Like, I need to find the other good character and make him be like, yes, this is the thing. What happened? What do we do? Please fix this. Not in so many words, but that's kind of the vibe I got off of it. So he's going around and he's kind of thinking out his options, and he's talking with some of the other guys, and they're just like, well, you don't want to go into the Hobgoblin Cavern because they're gonna pummel you. You don't want to go, maybe you don't want to go through the orc. They know about the orc tunnels, like the tunnel in the underwater, so he knows that he can swim it. But they're worried about tipping the orcs off that there is something there to find. He eventually decides to go and try and talk his way past the hobgoblins. And I have them all standing there, their arms are crossed, they're like ready to go, just like, we're not having this. And he did a couple of, he played it off really well, like kind of played to a sense of honor, which I like the hobgoblins to have. I like that they're these, like, strong militaristic type guys. The way their characters, the way they play mechanically in 5e, it kind of, it plays off of their idea, this idea that they have this tactics system where they're going to work together and get advantage on, the enemies of them, and just, really work on like flanking maneuvers and stuff. And just, I don't know what this is. What is this? So he played it like he had this really strong sense of honor and was really apologizing for his foolish teammates back there. And I had them attack him a couple times because he failed the perception check. But after that, and he didn't fight back, he just kind of took the hits. He had the help to do it. They were like, okay, you know what? Fine. You carry on. And they let him pass, and that was that. He went and told Bromdeer. Bromdeer came back, and he was ready to do some stuff. But at that point, I was like, you know what? This is starting to go off the rails, so let's bring it back in. And at that point, I had Gistelek, the leader of Gistelek. Say that 10 times fast. I had him meet up with them in the first hidden cave. There's a couple of caves that they had to do these perception checks to get past, and in the first one, where they found a set of thieves' tools that were apparently just unowned in a bag sitting there, those were his, and he plays it off like, yeah, you owe me big time. And they were like, well, I got these rubies, And just select, unlike a normal goblin who would just be like, yep, that works, thanks. Said, no, you keep those. I've seen you coming down here, not coming back for days at a time. You're working on something, and I want to be a part of it. At this point, Cupid almost just attacks them outright. Actually, I don't think it was Cupid. I think Brav almost attacked them outright, and then kind of decided that Cupid wouldn't do that, which I thought was good. And I think if we were sitting around a table, it was good that we're playing virtually very far away from each other, because Cal might have slapped Brav upside the head if they were sitting around the same table. So they go back and they talk about it. They decide that that might work. This plan of like escape might work. They have all this arms and armor, and maybe by equipping some of the goblins, they can escape. The goblins say, "Hey, what about the orcs? They're really good. Fodder. Send them in first, see what happens." Now, Bromdeer, who is kind of the de facto leader of the party, I think it's become a little more apparent even in this session versus last one that Bromdeer is the character that is very, to the point, ready to go, man of action. And Cal is also a very, very much in that way of like action and like, let's do the thing and let's move on and move forward. Which is, I think in this group is very good, because none of them are super familiar with D&D, at least 5th edition as a system. We're getting there, especially a couple of these guys. But I think he's got this grasp of the roleplay part of it. Just having done these things before with me, being involved in like MMOs and things like that, he has a grasp of the roleplay part, and so I think his character is conveying this sense of wisdom and leadership very well. That said, in the combat encounters, Brav has some really good strategic insights. He's picking up this really well. So it's really cool to see this group come together and just enjoy playing together all around. So they come back, they make a plan, and they change it a little bit. Bromdeer decides to talk the hobgoblins into joining them, because the goblins, looking up to the hobgoblins, who are their cousins species-wise, say those would be really good guys to have. It's too bad you murdered their leader in cold blood. But Bromdeer says, hey, maybe I can fix this a little bit. Goes and talks to their kind of new de facto leader, and he kind of goes along that same track that Cupid was going on, of like honor and nobility, and like, what do you want? Like, let's get that for you. And like, I also felt like if I felt like the subordinate, this new lieutenant who is now the leader of the Hobgoblin faction, he's not some heroic character. He's not anything special. I feel like he would have been the kind who took a piece of what Feston believed and just kind of ran with that above everything else. So Feston was like this character who believed in honor, who believed in murdering elves wherever he found them, and escaping, but through honorable means. Like, the guards and him had a understanding where they're both hobgoblins. They believe the same things. And you know what, Feston, even though he's captured, he's a slave, he's pretty well renowned for deserting his unit and going and murdering elves. And they're pretty okay with that. Which is also part of why the guards were so harsh with the characters who killed him, because they liked him. But Bromdeer says, hey, if you get out of here, like, what is it you want? And he goes, well, we want to kill elf. And so he says, well, there's lots of elves out there, and you just got to take care of these guards with us, and you can kill all the elves you want. Which, he doesn't agree with, but he's trying to get allies for his mission. So it worked. He gets the hobgoblins to join them, and basically rallies the entire prison to revolt, to escape, to become armed with these weapons that they found. I think most of the characters had some form of weapon. A lot of them were improvised weapons. They were using miner's picks. They had some short swords that they'd found. They'd had some slings, stuff like that. But enough weapons where I felt like the mass of characters that they have behind them it doesn't even matter if they're in the front or the back. They're probably just going to escape, and it's just going to be a matter of how involved are they in which part of the escape, and what characters is this mob going to just kill, and who's going to be hiding, who's going to be at the player's mercy. As they begin to escape, Crispy tries to unlock the first door, and fails, pretty severely. So I felt like that was an easy one. That was one that should have really happened, like no problem. Um, so I had just to like come over and be like, hey, you've got the picks upside down. They're for goblin hands. They're not something a gnome would normally have. I guess we can say that. Protect Crispy's fragile ego. This is the one thing he does. This is what he's good at. Like, that's it. Sleight of hand. An occasional stealth. And he used that in the next one. There's 2 doors between them and the guard room. And on the next one, he rolled his stealth, and he did really well. And then he rolled his lock picking, and I was like, oh, are you going to make it this time? And he did. And so he unlocks the door. He stays stealth, so they don't notice the door is unlocked. They don't notice him in the dim light of the corridor. And he backs up, and the players bum rush them. It was a fairly easy encounter for them. There was a mechanic there where as soon as one guard went down, whatever guard was closest to like the back corner was going to grab a key and try and unlock the door and then escape to the next room to alert the rest of the compound. If that happened, it was going to be a more of a warfare type of a fight where people are ready, they're expecting you, they know you're going to come out, and all the guards are going to be there, and it's just a matter of like fighting through the waves with your waves, and that would have been a slog, it would have been a challenge, but it didn't matter because they slept the guard who was trying to escape, they slept the bugbear, they ended up taking 2 of them captive. I don't know what happened to them yet. We haven't gotten that far, but they basically just steamrolled the entire grotto. They got up onto the main level, managed to cut off. They sent Crispy up to actually disable the bell. He stealthed up, disabled the bell, and brought it back down with him. So they don't even have a bell, even if, not that it really mattered because there's just so many. They just swarmed, and tactically, there wasn't much that the guards could do. In the guard common, there were 5 or 6 hobgoblins ready to fight, full armor, shield and sword ready, and it was a massacre. Malphasette actually managed to help. She is now famous in the group for rolling really poorly, especially with her Eldritch Blast cantrip, but she managed to charm one of the guards for an hour, so he's kind of turned on his friends, just made it so much easier, just almost took him out with one go. And because he's a mercenary, even when he becomes uncharmed, it's not like he's going to turn on them. He's just going to kind of join the new hobgoblins and just say, hey, I survived. What are you going to do about it? Close by, there was a barracks for the guards. When I was setting up all the encounters, I did things semi-randomly, decided how many were asleep by dice roll, and they were all asleep. So there were 12 guards in there, and they were all asleep. So they decided that they were going to send Crispy and empty caverns in there with some of the orcs to just slaughter them. And they did. I didn't even roll anything. I just said, you charge in there with your army of orcs, and they're dead. They did loot that room as well. They looted a bunch of armor. They took a bunch of weapons. Most of it they gave to their allies. They took a little bit. I think one of them took one weapon that was more ideal for them. Gave the other one away. And they prepared to move on. They found a secret passage between the barracks and the storeroom of the tavern. Went in. Crispy rolled like a 23 for stealth. So I had Gertrude Grieger, the daughter, who's a good character and just kind of like there by association because that's what her family does, and like she's not really hurt, not really in it, but she was there, turned around, doing something, fidgeting with something in the storeroom, and Crispy's just like walking behind her, steals like a couple coppers off of her or something, just cuz, and he kind of peeks out into the tavern and sees all these people, notably a couple of guards, Drusus Skullskewerer and Gillian Grieger, the wife of Gladwin Grieger. and a bunch of other common people who, push comes to shove, are probably not going to fight them. While he's doing this, the party sends Empty Cavern's Snake, who is his familiar, out into the main arena viewing area to kind of see what's going on there, and sees a few guards. They come up with a plan where EC puts on a disguise of some nobles' clothes because they captured a couple nobles in the common room of the guards. Puts on some of their clothes, passes a stealth check, a performance check, something. I can't remember what I said that he rolled. But he passes it, cuts right up next to them, and then Thundering Smite, Thundering Blast, whatever it's called, just boom. As that goes on, that's the signal. They charge in through the common room. They've captured Jillian Grieger, moved her back with some of the other noble hostages, and they charge in through there. They send some more guys out to follow EC, and unfortunately, he was trying to just have a Fusro Da moment off this cliff into the arena. Kills one guy outright, sends him flying into the pit, and the other two make their save. Take half damage, I think, or no damage. I don't remember what exactly happened, but they took a little damage somewhere along the lines, and then I just had this massive army coming out, and just they said arrows to the front, so I was like, okay, let's do a couple rolls just to see how they do, and they just murdered them. And so they swarmed over, cut off the escape route, and the party came in, and that was kind of the boss fight of this area, because they're facing Drursa Skullskewer, the captain of the Hobgoblin Guards. And this guy is strong. Not only is he strong in the encounter, I actually buffed him even further because of the way that the players have been just steamrolling everything I have for them. So he is in this encounter. Jillian Grieger's in this encounter. She has multi-attack. She has 2 long swords that she can attack with at once. And there's a couple of guards just to, keep the action economy kind of even. It was a tougher fight than it had to be because Squid spent most of it kind of maneuvering around to make a quick escape. And as people started to take more and more damage and they kind of were realizing like, hey, this is kind of a tough fight, he was like, okay, fine, I'll come. And he dashes in and, does some work, saves somebody's bacon. Brav went down in this fight. So he's gone down 2 times at this point. Once facing the bears that they were facing last time, and now in this encounter. And he, on his next turn, he rolls a 20, gets up with 1 HP, and he's going, I feel like I should really back off. Like, I don't really want to die here. And everyone's like, yeah, you should probably just back off. Just play it safe. Like, there's nothing to worry about. Like, here, like, we got this. It's not that big a deal. Like, we've already done so much damage to Jursas. How much more can he really have? I think at that point he had like half his hit points. So I was like, hey, you could go in. Like, more damage never hurt anybody. And they're all going, and he's like, yeah, you know what? You're right about that. And everyone else is going, no, you can't listen to the DM. He's just playing you for a fool. And in this case, I was. But I felt like I was being obvious enough about it that I didn't feel bad or like I was trying to trap him in something. He knows me. He knows that's kind of my humor. Because I really do believe that in most cases, like 90% of cases, it's not a matter of me versus you. It's a matter of you and me versus this whole world that just, happens to be inside our heads. We're telling a story, and that story relies on your character being alive. If your character dies, that sucks, and your story's over, and yeah. So Brav goes in, he goes to do some more damage. Of course, one of the characters hits him, brings him down again, but that was probably the last turn of combat because then they finished off Jillian, they finished off Jursis, and the Hobgoblins were no match for them. And at this point, they realize, A, that Brav was their healer. He has Lay on Hands, he has spellcasting, and none of the other people do. They haven't found any health potions yet. So they go, okay, well, we'll have to wait for Zante. She'll come up eventually. She's in the back. She's old. She's just, she's just part of the support, and we're just kind of bringing her along with us. Of course, we also realized that nobody has taken a long rest yet, so Zante already used her charges of Cure Wounds to clear up the mess up that they made when they were beaten nearly to death by the guards. So nobody is healing. And Brav is down. And basically, Bromdeer is like dragging him along behind him as they're moving around the rest of this area. They have a moment where they almost go to battle with the orcs, and Brav's just going, "No, no, don't do it. I'm not there to help." Which is good, because if that happened, it would have been a tight fight. They did have the hobgoblins with them. Bromdeer made enough of an impression that he was leading well enough that I felt like they would stick with him in a fight, but it would still have been rough because the orcs would have just kind of glomped them. And they're already, down abilities. They've burned the abilities that they've just gotten from their, second and third levels. So it would have just been a straight up HP fest, and some of them were running pretty low, especially Brav, who would probably have died because orcs are orcs. But they pass it over. Hager kind of indicates, Hager being the leader of the orcs, indicates that they haven't found Gladwin Grieger yet, and they are very keen on finding him before they leave. But other than that, they part, and they're pretty basically they part ways, and it's indicated to the players that the place is secure. Like, there's orcs wandering around, the hobgoblins are kind of milling about, but everything is secure. Everyone who would do battle with you is either dead, fleeing, or hidden. So they kind of try and figure out what to do next. They're figuring like, hey, well, are there health potions anywhere? Who can we ask? I remind them they've got a couple hostages, including the daughter of the leader of this place, who Crispy, the 3'3" gnome, goes up and tries to intimidate her and fails, which is actually not. It's somewhat surprising. It's not outside the realm of possibility that he would do it. He does have a pretty decent score in intimidation. But she was just ready to tell him, so like she's gonna cooperate. It didn't really matter what he said, how he said it, what he did. She just kind of like looks at him and is like, well, there's healing potions in the general store. Harry Dodd sells them. And they go to the general store. They find a lot of stuff there, including some potions, which they can't actually tell what they do yet. So not all of them maybe are potions of healing. Who knows? They're probably watching right now, so I'm not going to tell them for sure. They also find some armor, a couple more weapons. I think they found a greatsword in there. And basically they just take everything. The battle's over, so they're just kind of taking stuff for like later on they can sell, get a little cushion of gold ready so they can spend it on other things that they're going to need. Because as far as adventuring goes, they're not really stocked. They have basic weapons, basic armor, but I think they're going to be looking as soon as they get to the next town to really stock up on like the essentials, torches and climbing gear and lanterns and scrolls and potions and that kind of stuff. So that's the stuff that, because we started the way we did, where they had nothing except for rags, they're going to need to spend some time between this adventure and the next adventure, kind of doing in the next town that they come across. So I'm really excited now that they're finished. They're not quite done with Grieger's Grotto. They still need to technically leave the place. There's still a couple of things that they might want to do here. Maybe check in with a couple other allies. Really explore this upper arena area. And really, there's a couple of ways they can get out. And I'm curious to see what they do and how and why and where they go from here. I showed the players the world map and kind of where they are on it, just so they can kind of get a sense for like, what they might see outside of it. But their characters aren't going to necessarily know where they are, unless they find stuff in the grotto that tells them like, hey, like, here's a map. This is how you get to Grieger's Grotto, and this is where it is in relation to Rafina, the capital, and the Duchy of Ashith, and all these other places that I've actually made up because I found World Anvil recently, and it's great. So I'm ready for them to kind of move out. They already have a link to the kind of grand plot of this campaign. I've built in another one already based off of some stuff that a player has said, and we've got a couple other adventure hooks potentially between these four characters. I've got almost one for each of them at least. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go and how I can kind of be like, no, go over here or go over here. Especially, I have one dungeon ready for them that I really want them to do because I think it's going to be really cool and it's going to have some really interesting fights. And it's going to kind of give them a sense of being these powerful adventurers, not just escaped slaves, but like actual like heroes who are going and doing battle with real evil and powerful evil. So now that they have armor, I'm not as afraid to murder them by accident. So I'm going to be buffing up a lot of the encounters that I have for them right now, and really working on getting these battles that they're about to enter to be challenging, and also to have ways that they can kind of role play around them. I think that's something a lot of these guys like. And I'm curious to see what they do to overcome these obstacles that I'm putting in front of them. Not only that, but to get to the obstacles in the first place. It's going to be really interesting. I have some ideas of things I want to do, ways that I want to kind of pull them in the direction I want them to go. So I'm really, really excited for them to leave the grotto. I was really happy that I found this. I felt like it was really good. It kind of was enough of an enclosed area that I felt comfortable running it as my first 5e campaign. And now that they've kind of gone through this like mini I don't know, it's not quite a roller coaster, it's not like on rails, but it's not quite an open world. It's like bumper cars where you can kind of go where you want, but then you're gonna hit the sides and you got to kind of go back and bump into other stuff. So this bumper car adventure was really nice, but I can't wait to get them into the open world and put them onto a couple of different tracks depending on where they want to go, if I've mixed my metaphors enough. So thank you for watching. Same deal as before. This next video will probably come out in a couple weeks. We just played this campaign last Friday. We're going to look at some times that we can go get together for the next session. This week, last week, the week before last, it was my birthday, and this week I'm going to be out of town. So hopefully for next week we can find a good time for everybody and we can all make it, because I really enjoyed running the table of 4 people versus 3. 3 was fun and exciting, but having that 4th person really added an extra layer of depth. So that was a lot of fun, and I hope we can do that next time, especially as we're leaving this area. That said, I'm going to start working on really getting weekly videos out. So if you've been enjoying this, hopefully you'll enjoy some of this other content. I'm going to be putting together some adventure modules. So where this is more of a campaign diary of what happened, I want to put these forward to GMs to be like, hey, this is something that I did. This is something that I made and come up with. And here's a brief look at it if you want to play it yourself. All the modules are going to go up on the DM's Guild, so you can get them there. I don't know if they're going to be free or priced or what the price is going to be, but hopefully if you like it enough, you'll want to throw a buck at it, at least. So thanks for watching. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great week, a great 2 weeks maybe, and I will see you in the next adventure.